Hello, my little friends. Today I will tell you a story about a girl named Alice, a girl who was very much like you in some ways, curious, full of imagination, and always asking questions. Her adventures began on a perfectly ordinary afternoon, but curiosity carried her somewhere extraordinary. Alice was sitting by the riverbank with her sister, feeling quite bored. The day was warm, the air was still, and her sister was reading a book with no pictures, no conversations, nothing to interest Alice at all. What is the use of a book? Alice wondered, without pictures or conversations? It was then that something very unusual happened. A white rabbit hurried past her, wearing a coat and carrying a pocket watch. Imagine that, my friends, a rabbit with a watch, muttering to himself, "Oh dear, I shall be late." Most people would have thought they were dreaming, but Alice, curious as ever, jumped to her feet and ran after him. And when the white rabbit popped into a rabbit hole, Alice did not hesitate. She went in after him. The long fall. Now, this was no ordinary rabbit hole. Alice expected to land on the ground quickly, but instead she kept falling, and falling, and falling. Down she went, as if she were tumbling through the middle of the earth. At first she was frightened, but then, being Alice, she began to wonder, will I fall all the way through the world and come out on the other side? Perhaps among people who walk with their heads downward. As she fell, she noticed cupboards and bookshelves on the sides of the tunnel, as if someone had furnished the rabbit hole like a house. She even saw jars of marmalade, though most were empty. Finally, after what felt like forever, Alice landed with a gentle thump on a pile of dry leaves. She was shaken, but not hurt. Looking around, she realized she was in a strange hallway full of doors. The hall of many doors. Alice tried each door, but all were locked. At last, she found a tiny key on a glass table. The key fit a little door hidden behind a curtain. Peeking through, Alice saw a beautiful garden with bright flowers and fountains. Oh, how lovely, Alice sighed, but the door was far too small for her to enter. On the table she found a bottle with a label that said, "Drink me." Alice, though cautious, decided to sip. Immediately she began shrinking smaller and smaller, until she was the perfect size to fit through the little door. But alas, she had forgotten the key on the table above, and now she was too tiny to reach it. Poor Alice cried a little, but then she spotted a small cake marked "Eat Me." With no better idea, she ate it. This time she grew taller and taller, until her head touched the ceiling. Curiouser and curiouser, she exclaimed. Alice was now far too big to fit through the little door, and so began her strange adventures of changing size, sometimes too big, sometimes too small, never quite the right size. The white rabbit again. Suddenly, the white rabbit scurried past her again, still in a hurry. "Oh, my ears and whiskers, how late it's getting," he cried. Alice tried to follow, but her great size got in the way. Luckily, she found another drink that shrank her down again. This time, she was small enough to slip through another passage and chase after the rabbit. Through winding hallways and gardens, Alice followed him, always just a little too late. If only he would stop for one moment, she thought. I could ask where we are. But the white rabbit seemed always busy, always hurrying, and so Alice kept chasing. The strange creatures. Soon Alice found herself outside a tiny house. From inside, the rabbit's voice cried, "Mary Ann, fetch me my gloves and fan at once." Alice, very confused, wondered if the rabbit thought she was his servant, but before she could decide what to do, she found herself growing again, so much that her arms stuck out of the house's windows. "Help! A monster is in my house," cried the rabbit. Soon a whole group of animals gathered outside, trying to figure out how to get her out. Alice felt terribly embarrassed. At last, she found another piece of cake that shrank her once more, and she slipped out of the house before the animals could trap her. Things are getting curiouser and curiouser, she muttered again. The caterpillar and the mushroom. Alice wandered deeper into the woods until she came upon a blue caterpillar sitting on a mushroom, calmly smoking a hookah pipe. "Who are you?" asked the caterpillar in a slow, dreamy voice. Alice hardly knew what to say. I hardly know, sir. At least I knew who I was this morning, but I've changed so many times since then." The caterpillar was not at all surprised. He simply told Alice that eating different sides of the mushroom would make her grow or shrink. At last, a solution to her size troubles. Alice carefully broke off 2 pieces, one from each side, and carried them with her. Whenever she needed to change size, she nibbled a bit. The Cheshire Cat. Not long after, Alice came upon a most extraordinary creature, the Cheshire Cat. It appeared suddenly, sitting on a tree branch, grinning from ear to ear. "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" Alice asked. "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to," the cat replied. Alice admitted she wasn't sure where she wanted to go. "Then it doesn't matter which way you go," said the cat, still grinning. This cat was full of riddles. Sometimes it vanished, leaving only its grin behind. Other times it reappeared in another tree, but it gave Alice one useful piece of advice. "You will see the Mad Hatter and the March Hare. Visit them, they are both mad." Alice thought madness was not exactly what she wanted to find, but her curiosity led her on. The Mad Tea Party. And so Alice arrived at the famous tea party. Around a long table sat the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, and a very sleepy dormouse. They were all crowded at one corner of the table, though there was plenty of room. "Have some wine," said the March Hare. Alice looked around and saw only tea. "I don't see any wine," she said. "There isn't any," replied the hare. Alice thought that was very rude, but rudeness was normal here, as she soon discovered. The Hatter asked her riddles like, "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" But when Alice asked for the answer, they admitted they didn't have one. The conversation went in circles, with nonsense upon nonsense. The Dormouse told a story about 3 sisters who lived at the bottom of a treacle well. Nobody seemed to listen. Finally, Alice grew tired of the silliness and left. Wonderland was full of strange characters, but she hoped to find some sense somewhere. Toward the Queen's garden, Alice wandered once again until she found herself in a garden where the playing cards themselves were painting white roses red. Why? Because the Queen of Hearts wanted red roses, and they had planted the wrong ones. Before Alice could ask more, a trumpet sounded, and the Queen arrived with her army of cards. The Queen was fierce and quick to shout, "Off with their heads!" But Alice, though nervous, stood her ground. The Queen looked at her and asked, "And who is this?" Alice tried to curtsy politely. The Queen decided she could stay, and even invited her to play a game of croquet. But this was no ordinary game. The balls were hedgehogs, the mallets were flamingos, and the hoops were soldiers bending over. The hedgehogs ran away, the flamingos refused to cooperate, and everyone cheated. Still, Alice played as best she could. Reflections. So, my little friends, this is how Alice first entered Wonderland, through curiosity, through courage, and through a willingness to explore the strange. She met creatures that taught her lessons. The White Rabbit showed her that time can make people hurry without purpose. The caterpillar reminded her that change is part of life. The Cheshire Cat taught her that sometimes direction matters less than curiosity. The Mad Hatter's tea party showed that not all riddles have answers. And the Queen of Hearts reminded her that authority can be both silly and scary. The croquet chaos. Alice had just begun a very strange game of croquet with the Queen of Hearts. Now, my little friends, you may think croquet is played with wooden mallets and balls. But in Wonderland, nothing was ordinary. The mallets were live flamingos, the balls were hedgehogs, and the arches were soldiers bent double. Each time Alice tried to strike her hedgehog, it rolled away or uncurled and scurried off. Her flamingo mallet twisted its long neck and looked up at her crossly instead of obeying. Meanwhile, the queen shouted furiously whenever anyone else made a move she disliked. "Off with his head," she cried again and again. Alice was horrified, but she soon noticed that no one was actually executed. The King of Hearts would quietly pardon each person when the queen wasn't looking. Alice began to see that in Wonderland, threats sounded big but often had little weight. The return of the Cheshire Cat. As the game continued in chaos, the Cheshire Cat reappeared. Its wide grin hovered in the air above the croquet ground. "How are you getting on?" it asked Alice. "Not very well," Alice admitted. "This game makes no sense at all." "In Wonderland," said the cat, "sense is optional." The queen noticed the cat and shouted, "Who dares appear at my game without permission?" "Off with its head." But of course, the cat was mostly a floating head already. The executioner complained he could not cut off a head without a body. The king argued one way, the queen another. Alice simply laughed at the absurdity. At last, the cat faded away, leaving only its grin, and the quarrel ended. The Duchess and her peculiar baby. After the game, Alice wandered and came to a house where the Duchess lived. The Duchess was a strange woman, sharp-faced but oddly cheerful. She held a baby that sneezed constantly. "Here, you may hold the child," the Duchess said suddenly, shoving the baby into Alice's arms. Alice carried it outside, but to her shock, the baby began to change. Its nose turned into a snout, its cries into grunts, until finally Alice realized it had turned into a pig. Better as a pig than a baby, Alice decided, and she let it trot off into the woods. This odd moment reminded Alice, and us, that things in Wonderland were never stable. Change could happen any time, in the strangest ways. The Queen's commands. Soon Alice was summoned back to the Queen. The Queen had taken a liking to Alice, though her temper flared easily. She ordered Alice to meet more Wonderland characters, including the Griffin, a creature half lion, half eagle, and the Mock Turtle, who was always sad though he had little reason to be. The Mock Turtle told long, rambling stories of his supposed school days under the sea. He described classes like reeling and writhing, taught by an old turtle called Tortoise because he taught us. His lessons seemed more like nonsense jokes than real learning. Still, Alice listened patiently, for she was kind-hearted. The Mock Turtle and Griffin even taught her a dance called the Lobster Quadrille, where sea creatures were thrown into the sea as part of the steps. It all seemed ridiculous, but Alice realized that sometimes people tell silly stories not because they are true, but because they bring joy or at least distraction. The trial begins. At last, the Queen commanded that everyone attend a trial. The Knave of Hearts was accused of stealing tarts the Queen had baked. The courtroom was crowded with Wonderland characters, animals, cards, and of course the King and Queen themselves. The White Rabbit appeared as a herald, blowing his trumpet to announce the case. Alice was curious and excited, though she thought the whole matter silly. After all, why would anyone steal tarts when the Queen could simply bake more? The jury was made up of various creatures, scribbling notes on slates though they didn't know what to write. The witnesses included the Mad Hatter, who arrived nervously carrying a teacup. He stammered through his testimony until the Queen shouted, "Off with his head." The Hatter ran away before the sentence could be carried out. Next came the Duchess's cook, who only shouted about pepper and sneezed until she was excused. Finally, the White Rabbit called the next witness, Alice herself. Alice rose again. Alice stepped forward, feeling nervous. But as she did, something strange happened. She began to grow taller, bit by bit, until she was once again her full size. The courtroom of tiny cards and creatures now looked small beneath her. "Silence in the court," cried the King. "The jury will consider their verdict. Sentence first, verdict afterward," shouted the Queen, showing once more that in Wonderland, rules were upside down. Alice, now brave with her size returned, spoke firmly, "That's not how things are done. You are nothing but a pack of cards." The awakening. At that, the whole courtroom rose up, cards flying at her like a storm. Alice tried to brush them away, but the cards kept coming until suddenly she woke up. She was back on the riverbank, her head in her sister's lap. There were no cards, no queen, no Cheshire cat, only leaves fluttering in the breeze. It had all been a dream, or had it? For Alice remembered every detail so vividly. Her sister listened kindly as Alice told her story. Then Alice ran off to tea, leaving her sister to daydream about Wonderland too. Lessons from Wonderland. My little friends, what do we learn from Alice's time in Wonderland? 1. Curiosity opens doors. Alice dared to follow the white rabbit, and though it led to confusion, it also led to discovery. 2. Change is natural. Alice grew and shrank many times, reminding us that change is part of life. 3. Authority is not always right. The queen shouted orders, but Alice learned to stand firm and speak truth. 4. Nonsense has meaning. Even silly stories and riddles can carry lessons about patience, humor, and imagination. 5. Dreams can guide us. Wonderland was a dream, but it gave Alice wisdom she carried back to her real life. The dream that felt real. My little friends, when Alice woke up by the riverbank, she found herself safe, sound, and very much in the real world. Yet everything she had seen, the White Rabbit, the Mad Hatter, the Queen of Hearts, still felt as vivid as if it had truly happened. This is the mystery of Wonderland. Was it a dream? Yes. But was it also a lesson? Certainly. Dreams, you see, can sometimes reveal truths that ordinary days keep hidden. Alice's dream told her much about herself. It showed her that curiosity, courage, and imagination are powerful companions. Alice's growth. Although Alice's body changed size many times in Wonderland, the greatest growth was not physical at all. It was inside her heart and mind. At the start, she was a little girl bored with her sister's book. She wanted excitement, pictures, and stories. But as she journeyed through Wonderland, she discovered that excitement is not always easy or comfortable. It can be confusing, silly, even frightening. Still, Alice did not give up. She kept asking questions, she kept moving forward, and she found her voice. By the end, she dared to stand up to the Queen of Hearts herself, saying boldly that the queen and her court were nothing more than a pack of cards. That was courage. That was growth. The meaning of nonsense. Wonderland is full of nonsense. People drink tea forever but never eat. Cats grin and vanish. Animals give riddles with no answers. Babies turn into pigs. At first, it seems like nonsense means nothing. But actually, nonsense can teach us something very important. Not everything in life must have a clear answer. Sometimes the value lies in the wonder, the laughter, the surprise. Alice learned patience in confusion. She learned to enjoy the strangeness without always needing to solve it. That is a lesson even grown-ups sometimes forget. The question of time. Do you remember the White Rabbit, always in a hurry with his watch? Or the Mad Hatter's tea party, stuck at 6 o'clock forever? Time in Wonderland was never normal. For Alice, this showed that time feels different depending on how we live. When we are bored, time drags. When we are curious or happy, it flies. And sometimes, like at the tea party, time seems stuck, refusing to move. From Wonderland, Alice carried home the idea that time is precious. Better to spend it on curiosity and kindness than on endless hurry. The Queen of Hearts and false power. The Queen of Hearts was loud, frightening, and quick to shout, off with their heads. Yet in truth, her power was hollow. No one was ever really executed. The king quietly pardoned them all. This shows us that some people may try to rule with anger and fear, but true authority comes not from shouting, but from fairness and wisdom. Alice learned not to be afraid of empty threats. She grew brave enough to face the queen and speak the truth. Following the rabbit. Why did Alice follow the white rabbit in the first place? Because she was curious. If she had ignored him, she would have stayed by the riverbank, bored and unchanged. But because she followed, she discovered Wonderland, met countless strange characters, and learned important lessons. This reminds us that curiosity is the beginning of adventure. Asking why, or what if, can lead us to discoveries we never expected. Lessons for all of us. Now, let us gather the lessons Alice brought back from Wonderland. 1. Curiosity leads to discovery. 2. Change is part of growing, even when it feels confusing. 3. Not every question has an answer, and that is okay. 4. Authority is not always wise. Stand up for what is right. 5. Dreams can teach us truths, even if they seem like nonsense. These lessons make Alice's story as fresh today as it was over 150 years ago. That is why children still love it, and grown-ups still smile when they hear it. Why Wonderland lasts forever. Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland has lasted because it captures something timeless, the way children see the world. For children, everything is possible. Cats can vanish, rabbits can talk, and tea parties can last forever. But it also reminds adults to see the world with wonder again, for when we forget how to be curious, life becomes too ordinary. Alice reminds us to dream, to imagine, to laugh at nonsense. A gentle ending. As Alice told her sister about the dream, her sister also closed her eyes and imagined Wonderland. She thought of the strange creatures, the games, the nonsense, and the courage of her little sister. She realized that childhood itself is a kind of wonderland, full of imagination and lessons, waiting to be remembered when we grow older. And that, my little friends, is perhaps the greatest magic of all. Stories that help us see both the child we are and the child we once were. Goodbye with kind wishes, my little friends.